I was crouched behind the antique filing cabinet in my husband's home office when I heard him tell his attorney exactly how he planned to strip me of every asset I owned before serving me with divorce papers. What he didn't know was that my phone was recording every single word. I'd already photographed the documents spread across his desk, and my lawyer was waiting for my call. By the time he realized I was 20 steps ahead, his entire scheme would crumble to dust. Before we dive back in, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And if this story resonates with you, don't forget to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is something truly special I can't wait to share. My name is Natasha Brennan, and I built everything I have from absolutely nothing. At 36 years old, I owned a chain of 9 boutique fitness studios across Silver Lake City, for premium wellness centers in the Harbor Ridge district, and a luxury spa resort that had been featured in Elite Wellness magazine twice in the past year. My company, Brennan Wellness Enterprises, had become the gold standard in our industry, known for transforming lives while building a 8-figure empire. I met Cameron Frost at a medical conference 5 years ago. He was charming, impeccably dressed, and working as a pharmaceutical sales representative for a mid-level biotech company. He didn't have much financially, but he radiated ambition, or at least, that's what I believed at the time. What I mistook for drive and passion was actually cold, calculated targeting. He'd been studying me long before we ever spoke. We married after a passionate 20-month courtship. I was completely transparent about my business holdings from day one, even walking him through my entire portfolio during our engagement period. I believe in absolute honesty, I'd told him over dinner one night. No secrets, especially about finances. He'd reached across the table, squeezed my hand with that warm smile of his, and said, "Your success is incredible. I'd never dream of standing in your way or trying to take credit for what you've built." Looking back now with clear eyes, I can see exactly what he was doing. He wasn't admiring my achievements, he was cataloging them. Creating a mental inventory of everything he planned to steal. Mapping out his strategy with the precision of a surgeon planning an operation. The discovery happened on a Tuesday evening in mid-October. The weather had turned crisp and cool, the kind of autumn night that made Silver Lake City feel like something from a storybook. I'd left my flagship studio early, planning to surprise Cameron with reservations at Meridian, the French restaurant where he'd proposed 3 years earlier. His favorite jazz ensemble was performing that night. Our home was a converted Victorian mansion in the Willowbrook Heights neighborhood, one of my earliest renovation projects. I'd personally overseen every detail of transforming it from a crumbling relic into our dream residence. The bitter irony of that phrase now, our dream residence, when he was actively plotting to make it his alone, makes my stomach turn even months later. I pulled into the circular driveway and immediately noticed Cameron's car parked at an odd angle near the garage. Strange. He'd texted me barely 90 minutes ago saying he'd be working late at the downtown office, reviewing quarterly sales projections. Another lie, I'd soon discover, in an endless string of carefully crafted deceptions. I collected my handbag and briefcase, then walked through our front entrance calling his name. The foyer was empty. The kitchen showed no signs of activity. Our bedroom upstairs was undisturbed. Then I heard it, muffled voices drifting down from Cameron's third-floor office, the converted attic space he'd claimed as his private workspace. The office door was completely closed, which was unusual. Cameron typically left it ajar during normal business calls, only closing it for confidential client discussions. Something in my intuition, that deep, primal warning system we all possess but don't always trust, told me something was very wrong. I silently climbed the stairs, carrying my heels in one hand to avoid making any sound. As I approached the closed door, I could distinguish 2 distinct voices. Cameron's familiar tone, and another man's voice, deeper, more authoritative, with the formal cadence of someone accustomed to legal proceedings. It took a lot of care and time to prepare and narrate this for you, so if you're enjoying it, a quick subscribe really helps and means the world to us. Alright, let's get back to it. They were speaking in hushed but urgent tones, the kind of conversation people have when they believe they're completely alone and unobserved. The door was solid mahogany, but there was a narrow gap along the bottom edge where the wood had warped slightly during last summer's humidity. I'd been meaning to have it fixed. In that moment, I was grateful for my procrastination. I knelt down carefully, my heart pounding so violently I was certain they'd hear it through the wooden barrier. That's when I heard the words that would change everything. The asset transfers need to be executed before she has any indication of what's happening, the unfamiliar voice stated matter-of-factly. Once everything is legally registered in your name, the divorce filing becomes remarkably straightforward. She'll have zero legal grounds to contest what will technically be your property. My entire body went ice cold. Every muscle tensed. My breath caught in my throat. How long will the documentation process take? That was Cameron's voice, but not the Cameron I knew. This wasn't the warm, supportive husband who kissed me goodbye each morning. This was business Cameron. Strategic Cameron. A version of my husband I'd never heard before, and one that terrified me. Approximately 2 to 3 weeks if we don't encounter any regulatory complications, the lawyer responded smoothly. I've already drafted the power of attorney documents using the signature samples we discussed previously. The elegant aspect of this approach is that everything appears entirely legitimate, standard spousal asset consolidation for tax optimization purposes. By the time she comprehends what's occurred, the transfers will be finalized and legally ironclad. I pressed my hand firmly over my mouth to prevent the gasp that wanted to escape. They were discussing stealing my life's work as casually as if they were planning a vacation. My phone was in my jacket pocket. Moving with excruciating slowness, I extracted it and opened the voice recording application. My hands trembled, but I managed to press the red record button and slide it back into my pocket. Whatever happened next, I would have evidence. I would have proof. And Cameron Frost would discover that the woman he'd underestimated was about to become his worst nightmare. What about the prenuptial agreement? Cameron asked, and I could hear papers rustling through the door. Won't that create complications? The lawyer, whoever he was, let out a low chuckle that made my skin crawl. Actually, the prenup works beautifully in our favor. Since you signed an agreement protecting her premarital assets, these transfers will appear as mutual marital planning rather than asset seizure. No judge will question a husband and wife consolidating holdings for estate planning purposes. It's textbook financial strategy. I stayed frozen on that attic landing, my phone recording every poisonous word. The prenup I'd insisted on, the document designed to protect what I'd built before our marriage, was being weaponized as the perfect cover for theft. And what about her business partner? Cameron continued. Doesn't she co-own several properties with that woman? What's her name again? Lydia Hartwell, the lawyer supplied. 3 wellness centers are jointly held. Those will require a different tactical approach. However, the 6 fitness studios, 2 standalone wellness centers, and the spa resort are solely in Natasha's name. Those are our primary targets. 6 fitness studios. 2 wellness centers. The spa resort. They were casually discussing the theft of approximately $12 million in assets. Properties I'd spent a decade building, one careful investment at a time. When do I sign the documents? Cameron's voice carried an eagerness that made me nauseous. Tomorrow afternoon. Come to my office at 4 o'clock. Bring everything I sent to your encrypted email, the property deeds, the financial statements, the bank account documentation. Once you sign the power of attorney, I can initiate the transfer process immediately. Perfect, Cameron said, and I could hear the satisfaction in his tone. And Natasha won't be notified? Not until it's far too late to stop it. They both laughed, actually laughed, about destroying my life. It took enormous effort and time to prepare and narrate this story for you. If you're finding it compelling, a quick subscribe really helps us and means the world. Alright, let's continue. I heard chairs scraping against the wooden floor. They were standing up, concluding their meeting. I had maybe 45 seconds before Cameron would open that door and find me crouched outside like something from a spy thriller. I moved with desperate speed but forced silence, backing down the stairs. My phone was still recording in my pocket. Once I reached the second-floor landing, I slipped my heels back on and walked with deliberate normalcy toward the front door. I opened it, then closed it again with enough force to be heard throughout the house. Cameron?" I called out, projecting casual cheerfulness. "Are you home?" I heard rapid footsteps above me, then Cameron appeared at the top of the main staircase, his expression perfectly composed. "Natasha. I didn't hear you come in. I thought you were at the East Side studio until 8? The lie flowed from his mouth so smoothly. No hesitation, no guilt, no tells whatsoever. "Finished early," I said, matching his casual tone. "I was thinking we could grab dinner at that new Italian place on Riverside Avenue." "That sounds wonderful," he said, descending the stairs and kissing my cheek. His lips felt like ice against my skin. "Let me just wrap up a conference call." "Give me 10 minutes." Conference call. Another lie. He was probably escorting his co-conspirator lawyer out through the back entrance. Perfect. I'll change clothes. I headed toward our bedroom, every instinct screaming at me to run, to confront him, to do something other than continue this charade. But I forced myself to maintain the performance. Once in our bedroom with the door closed, I pulled out my phone and stopped the recording. 12 minutes and 43 seconds of crystal clear audio documenting conspiracy to commit fraud. My hands were still shaking as I immediately uploaded the file to 3 separate cloud storage accounts that Cameron didn't know existed. Then I sent a single text message to Lydia Hartwell, "Emergency. Need to see you tonight. Urgent. I'll explain everything." Her response came within seconds, "My place. 8 p.m., I'll order food." I changed into jeans and a sweater, taking deep breaths to steady myself. When I looked in the mirror, I was surprised to see that I appeared completely normal. No trace of the terror and fury churning inside me. My face was calm, composed, the mask perfectly in place. Cameron and I went to dinner. We sat across from each other at a cozy corner table, discussing my day, his alleged conference call, weekend plans. He was so convincing. So natural. If I hadn't heard that conversation with my own ears, I'd never suspect the man sharing calamari with me was plotting to rob me blind. "You seem distracted," he observed, refilling my wine glass. "Everything okay?" "Just tired," I lied smoothly, matching his deceptive energy. "The expansion plans for the new studio are exhausting. So many permits and regulations." "You work too hard," he said, reaching across the table to take my hand. "You need to delegate more, trust other people to help carry the load." Trust other people. The irony was almost enough to make me laugh out loud. We finished dinner and drove home. Cameron fell asleep quickly, his breathing deep and even. No guilt disturbed his rest. No conscience kept him awake. I lay beside him in the darkness, my mind racing through everything I'd heard. The lawyer's voice, the transfer timeline, the encrypted emails, the 4 o'clock meeting tomorrow. My phone was charging on my nightstand, the recording safely stored in multiple secure locations. But I needed more than audio. I needed documents, evidence, an airtight case that would destroy his scheme before he could execute it. At 2 in the morning, once I was certain Cameron was deeply asleep, I slipped out of bed. I grabbed my phone and moved silently down the hallway to his office. The door was unlocked. Why would he lock it when he believed I was completely ignorant of his plans? I pushed it open carefully and closed it behind me, turning on only my phone's flashlight rather than the overhead lights. His desk was exactly as I remembered from earlier. Leather portfolio in the center. Laptop closed but present. File folders stacked on the left side. I opened the portfolio first. Inside were copies of my property deeds, all of them. 9 fitness studios, 4 wellness centers, the spa resort. Each deed had sticky notes attached with handwritten annotations in Cameron's precise script. Priority 1, transfer first, simple title, fast process, may require additional documentation. My hands trembled as I photographed each document with my phone, making sure to capture Cameron's handwriting clearly. This was premeditation in black ink on yellow paper. Behind the deeds, I found printed emails. The address was different from Cameron's work email, frost.private@securemail.net. I photographed every page, my anger building with each new message. The email chain went back 7 months. 7 months of planning, strategizing, discussing the optimal methods to legally steal my assets. One email made my blood boil. The key is patience. Let her continue expanding the business while you position yourself as the supportive spouse. The more she acquires before the transfer, the more profitable this becomes for you. She's essentially working to fund your future while believing she's building your shared life together. Cameron's response: agreed. She's so focused on the new Harbor Ridge location right now, she doesn't notice anything else. Perfect timing. They were discussing me like I was a mark in a con. A useful idiot working to enrich the man who planned to betray me. I photographed everything, then carefully replaced the portfolio exactly as I'd found it. Cameron was meticulous. He'd notice if anything was out of place. Next, I checked his computer's browser history using the desktop he kept for when his laptop was at the office. The search history was damning. How to transfer spouse's property without consent, power of attorney limitations in Silver Lake City, legal methods for asset acquisition in marriage, community property laws and exceptions. Screenshot after screenshot documenting his research into stealing from me. I spent 90 minutes in that office, photographing, documenting, gathering evidence. By the time I crept back to bed at 3:30 a.m., I had over 300 photographs on my phone. Cameron never stirred. He slept peacefully beside me, completely unaware that his entire conspiracy had just been exposed and documented. The next morning, I woke before him and went through my normal routine. Coffee, workout clothes, reviewing emails. The picture of a woman with no idea her world was about to explode. I have back-to-back client sessions today, I told Cameron as he came downstairs for breakfast. Probably won't be home until 7 or 8. No problem, he said, kissing my forehead. I have that late meeting anyway. Probably won't see you until tonight. Late meeting. The 4 o'clock appointment with his lawyer to sign documents that would steal my life's work. Have a good day, I said, smiling warmly. You too, love. The moment his car pulled out of the driveway, I was on the phone. Lydia, it's me. Cancel everything today. We need to talk now. And Lydia, I paused, my voice steel wrapped in velvet, bring copies of all our joint property documents. Every single one. This is going to be a very long day. My second call was to Patricia Monroe, the most aggressive divorce attorney in Silver Lake City. A woman whose reputation for destroying unfaithful spouses was legendary. Ms. Monroe's office, a crisp voice answered. This is Natasha Brennan. I need an emergency consultation today. It's regarding asset protection in an anticipated divorce. There was a brief pause. Ms. Brennan from Brennan Wellness Enterprises? Yes. Hold please. 30 seconds later, a commanding voice came on the line. Ms. Brennan. Patricia Monroe. I've followed your business success for years. Impressive work. What's the situation? I gave her the condensed version. Husband conspiring with lawyer. Meeting today at 4. Planning to steal $12 million in assets. Have you confronted him? She asked immediately. No. He has no idea I know anything. Excellent. Keep it that way. Can you come to my office at 11? I'll be there. My third call was to my brother, Dylan Brennan, a federal prosecutor who specialized in white-collar crime. Tasha. His voice was groggy. I'd woken him. It's barely 7 in the morning. What's wrong? Dylan, I need your legal expertise. Not as my brother, as a prosecutor who understands fraud. I heard rustling as he sat up. Tell me everything. I explained the situation, the overheard conversation, the emails, the documents, the planned 4 o'clock meeting. Tasha, this isn't just divorce territory, Dylan said, his prosecutor brain engaging. This is criminal fraud, identity theft, potentially wire fraud if he's used electronic communications. You need to document everything and consider involving law enforcement. I'm already documenting. I have recordings, photographs, everything. Good. Don't confront him yet. Build the case first, make it airtight, then bring it to authorities when he can't deny or destroy evidence. We talked for another 30 minutes, Dylan outlining exactly what evidence would be most valuable from a criminal prosecution standpoint. By the time I arrived at Lydia's penthouse at 9, I had a comprehensive action plan. Lydia opened her door, took one look at my face, and immediately pulled me into a hug. What did that bastard do? I told her everything. The overhead conversation, Cameron's conspiracy, the 7 months of planning, the 4 o'clock meeting where he'd signed documents to steal everything I'd built. Lydia's expression progressed from shock to fury to cold calculation. That absolute snake, she said quietly. How long have you been married? 5 years this December. And he's been planning this for how long? At least 7 months based on the emails. Maybe longer. Lydia stood and walked to her home office, returning with her laptop and a leather binder. First priority, we protect our joint properties immediately. This morning, I'm calling our corporate attorney. We'll restructure ownership of those 3 wellness centers into an irrevocable trust requiring both signatures for any changes. Won't that alert Cameron that I'm suspicious? No, because I'll frame it as my idea for liability protection. You can even mention it to him casually tonight, like I'm being neurotic about lawsuits. He won't connect it to his plans. I nodded, grateful for her strategic thinking while my emotions were still raw. What else? I asked. We need to identify this lawyer. The one Cameron's meeting at 4. Lydia opened her laptop. Did you recognize the voice at all? No. But he sounded experienced, older. The way he discussed legal loopholes, this isn't his first time helping someone commit fraud. Okay, so we're looking for someone unethical enough to facilitate spousal theft, but established enough to know the system's weaknesses. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up legal directories and bar association records. Cameron uses Thornhill and Partners for his regular business legal work, right? Lydia asked. Yes, but this felt different. More personal, like this lawyer works specifically for Cameron, not his company. Here's what we do, Lydia said. This afternoon, you follow Cameron. I know it sounds dramatic, but we need to know which law office he visits. Once we have a name, we can research the attorney's background, check for complaints, find patterns. The thought of trailing my own husband like a private investigator made my stomach turn, but she was absolutely right. Okay. I can do that. Good. Now, last night, did you secure your digital files? What do you mean? Your property documents, financial records, do you have them backed up somewhere Cameron can't access? They're in my office safe and in our shared cloud storage. Lydia's eyes widened. Remove them from shared storage immediately. Right now. Create a new account he doesn't know about. Also, check your email settings for forwarding rules. My blood went cold. You think he's been reading my emails? If he's planning something this elaborate, he's been gathering intelligence. How else would that lawyer know specific details about your properties? I pulled out my phone and logged into my email account immediately. Lydia watched as I navigated to the settings and filters section. There, buried in the forwarding rules, was something I'd never created: all emails containing the words property, deed, transfer, acquisition, or contract were being automatically forwarded to an address I didn't recognize, n.monitoring@privatemail.net. Oh my God, I whispered. Lydia's jaw tightened. Screenshot that right now. That's evidence of unauthorized access. Then delete it, but keep the screenshot. My hands shook as I captured the evidence and removed the forwarding rule. How long has this been active? I checked the creation date. 5 months. 5 months of Cameron intercepting my business communications. 5 months of him reading confidential correspondence with clients, attorneys, partners. 5 months of surveillance I'd never suspected. Natasha, Lydia said gently, we need to assume he knows everything about your business operations for at least the past 5 months. Every deal, every negotiation, every financial statement. I felt violated in a way that was almost worse than the planned theft itself. Then we use that against him, I said, my voice hardening. Lydia smiled grimly. Exactly what I was thinking. If he believes you're completely ignorant, he'll continue acting normally. We use that window to build our own case. We spent the next 4 hours creating a comprehensive strategy. Lydia, with her methodical mind, organized it into clear phases. Phase 1, Evidence Collection. Follow Cameron to identify the lawyer. Document all suspicious communications. Secure all property documents in protected locations. Monitor financial accounts for unusual activity. Install security cameras in strategic locations. Phase 2, Legal Protection. Consult with divorce attorney, my 11 o'clock appointment. Place protective holds on all property titles. Restructure vulnerable assets into protected trusts. Document Cameron's unauthorized email access. Prepare criminal referral documentation. Phase 3, Counter Strategy. Determine optimal timing for confrontation. Decide whether to pursue criminal charges. Plan media strategy if needed. Prepare how to control the narrative. By the time I left Lydia's apartment at 10:30, I had a battle plan and a renewed sense of control. At 11, I sat in Patricia Monroe's corner office overlooking Silver Lake City's financial district. Patricia was exactly as advertised, sharp gray suit, sharper intellect, eyes that missed nothing. "Show me what you have," she said without preamble. I spent the next hour walking her through everything. The recorded conversation, the email forwarding, the documents in Cameron's office, the 7 months of planning emails. I showed her every photograph, every screenshot, every piece of evidence. Patricia's expression remained neutral throughout, but her fingers drummed once on her mahogany desk when I showed her the emails, her only emotional tell. "This is excellent work," she said finally. "Your husband is going to prison, and you're going to keep every single asset." Prison? The word hung in the air. "Ms. Brennan, this isn't merely a divorce issue. This is criminal fraud on a grand scale. Identity theft, conspiracy, potentially forgery if he plans to fake your signature. We're discussing felony charges." My brother had said the same thing, but hearing it from Patricia made it feel more real. "Here's our strategy," Patricia continued, pulling out a legal pad. "First, we file emergency motions to freeze all your properties. No transfers can occur without court approval. Second, we document everything for criminal referral. Third, and this is crucial, you let him go to that meeting today." "What? Why?" "Because right now, we have conspiracy and planning. If he actually signs those power of attorney documents today, if he takes that final step toward execution, the case becomes absolutely airtight. No defense attorney can argue he was just considering it or changed his mind." My stomach twisted. "So I just let him do it?" "Not entirely. I'm having an investigator follow him to document the meeting. We'll photograph him entering the law office, record the time, identify the attorney. Once we know who the lawyer is, we add him as a co-conspirator." Patricia leaned forward. "Ms. Brennan, I know this feels counterintuitive. Every instinct tells you to stop this immediately. But one more day of patience results in a prosecution so strong that Cameron will have no option except to plead guilty. And when he does, you'll have complete leverage in the divorce settlement and criminal sentencing." I took a deep breath. She was right. I knew she was right. "Okay," I said. "One more day." "Good. Now, sign these documents authorizing me to represent you, and let's discuss divorce strategy." By the time I left Patricia's office at 1 o'clock, I had engaged the best divorce attorney in the city, filed protective motions on all my properties, and had a private investigator named Thomas Reed on standby to follow Cameron. At 3:30, I positioned myself in a coffee shop across the street from Thornhill and Partners, Cameron's usual law firm. Thomas Reed sat 3 tables away, his camera ready. At 3:45, Cameron's car pulled up. But instead of entering Thornhill and Partners, he walked 2 blocks east and entered a modern glass building. I quickly checked the building directory on my phone. 5th floor, Whitaker and Sons, attorneys at law. I texted the information immediately to Patricia and Thomas. Cameron emerged 45 minutes later looking satisfied. He'd done it. He'd signed the documents that he believed would transfer my life's work into his name. He had no idea that every step had been photographed, documented, and would soon be presented to a federal prosecutor. As I drove home, my phone rang. Patricia. We have him, she said, barely contained excitement in her voice. Thomas got clear photographs of Cameron entering and leaving Whitaker and Sons. We've identified the attorney as Jonathan Whitaker, 62 years old, practicing for 35 years. And here's the interesting part, he's been sanctioned twice by the state bar for ethics violations involving questionable asset transfers in divorce cases. So he's done this before. Repeatedly. He's built a specialty in what he calls aggressive asset protection, but what everyone else calls fraud. I've already contacted the district attorney's office. They're very interested in Cameron and Jonathan's conspiracy. What happens next? You go home. You act completely normal. You have dinner with Cameron. And you sleep well knowing that by Monday morning, federal agents will be executing search warrants on both Cameron's office and Whitaker's practice. That evening, Cameron came home with Thai takeout, smiling and relaxed. How was your day? I asked, my performance flawless. Productive, he said, kissing my cheek. Really productive. We ate dinner. We watched television. We went to bed. And I slept better than I had in days, knowing that justice was 72 hours away. The weekend stretched before me like a tightrope walk over an abyss. Every interaction with Cameron felt like performing in a play where only I knew the real script. Saturday morning, he suggested we go for breakfast at Harborview Cafe, the waterfront restaurant where we'd celebrated our first anniversary. You've seemed stressed lately, Cameron observed as we waited for our food, his hand covering mine on the table. Is everything all right with the business? I forced a smile, channeling every ounce of acting ability I possessed. Just the usual challenges. The new East Side location is taking longer to permit than expected. City bureaucracy, you know how it is. You work too hard, he said, his thumb stroking my knuckles. Maybe after things settle down, we should take a real vacation. Hawaii, maybe? You've always wanted to see Maui. Planning vacations we'd never take. Discussing futures that didn't exist. I wondered if he felt any guilt at all, or if I was simply a transaction to him now, something to be liquidated and cashed out. That sounds perfect, I said, matching his warm tone while my stomach churned. Sunday was worse. Cameron's parents, Donald and Ruth Frost, came over for dinner, a weekly tradition we'd maintained since our wedding. They were genuinely kind people who'd welcomed me into their family without reservation. Watching Cameron laugh and joke with them, playing the devoted son while concealing his criminal conspiracy, made me physically ill. You two seem so solid, Ruth said as she helped me clear dishes after dinner. Donald and I were just saying the other day how fortunate Cameron is to have found you. Not every man is lucky enough to marry a woman who's both successful and grounded. I smiled, but the words felt like knives. By this time tomorrow, her son would be under federal investigation. Their family would be shattered by scandal. And while Cameron absolutely deserved everything coming to him, I felt genuine sorrow for the collateral damage about to explode through the Frost family. We've been very fortunate, I managed to say, hating the ambiguity but unable to offer false reassurances. That night, lying in bed beside Cameron, I checked my phone one final time. Patricia had texted, everything set. Federal agents execute warrants at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Stay home until you hear from me. I turned off my phone and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow, everything would change. Monday morning arrived with unseasonably warm weather for November, bright sunshine streaming through our bedroom windows. Cameron woke early, unusually energetic as he prepared for work. Big week ahead, he said, adjusting his tie, one of the expensive silk ones I'd given him for his birthday. Jenkins wants me to present the quarterly pharmaceutical projections to the executive team on Wednesday. Could be a promotion opportunity. More lies wrapped in everyday conversation. I wondered what he'd really planned for this week. Following up on the property transfers, perhaps. Meeting again with Jonathan Whitaker to finalize paperwork. Maybe even consulting with a different divorce attorney to begin filing papers. That's exciting, I said, pouring coffee. Good luck with the presentation. Thanks. Love you. Love you too. The words tasted like ash, but I delivered them perfectly. He left at 7:45, briefcase in hand, completely unaware that federal agents were probably already positioning themselves outside his office building. The moment his car disappeared down our street, I grabbed my phone and called Lydia. It's happening, I said. Cameron just left for work. I know. Patricia called me 20 minutes ago. Federal agents are at both locations, Cameron's office and Whitaker's law firm. They're executing search warrants as we speak. My hand started shaking. Despite knowing this was coming, despite wanting justice, the reality of what was unfolding felt surreal. Are you okay? Lydia asked gently. I don't know. Ask me again in a few hours. Come over. You shouldn't be alone right now. I drove to Lydia's penthouse, my mind racing through 1,000 thoughts simultaneously. By the time I arrived, she had coffee ready and her laptop open, monitoring local news feeds. Nothing public yet, she said, but that's normal. They'll want to complete the searches and initial questioning before any media leaks. We sat together in her living room, waiting. The minutes crawled by with agonizing slowness. I couldn't eat. Could barely drink the coffee Lydia kept refilling. At 9:17, my phone rang. Cameron. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. Answer it, Lydia urged. Act completely normal. I accepted the call, putting it on speaker so Lydia could hear. Cameron? His voice was tight, strained, barely controlled panic bleeding through. Natasha. Something's happened. Federal agents are at my office. They're saying something about a fraud investigation. They've seized my computer, my files, everything. I don't understand what's happening. I let my voice rise with appropriate confusion and concern. What? Fraud investigation? Cameron, what are they talking about? I don't know. This is insane. They won't explain anything except that I need to come to the federal building for questioning. Natasha, I need you to find a lawyer. A criminal defense attorney. The best one you can find. The irony was almost too much. He wanted me to hire an attorney to defend him against charges stemming from his plot to rob me. Okay, I'll find someone. What kind of lawyer? What do I even search for? Criminal defense. White-collar crime specialist. Just find the best one in Silver Lake City. His voice cracked slightly. This has to be some kind of mistake. Some misunderstanding. I'll take care of it, I said. Call me as soon as you can. The line went dead. Lydia and I stared at each other for a long moment. Well, she said finally, that was quite a performance. You should consider acting as a second career. I let out a shaky laugh that was half relief, half hysteria. This is really happening. Yes, it is. And you did everything right. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia, Cameron detained for questioning. Whitaker also in custody. Both offices searched. Evidence seized. Everything proceeding exactly as planned. Do not go to federal building. Do not try to contact Cameron. Let him sit with this alone. Another text came through, this one from my brother Dylan, heard through channels about the Frost case. Federal prosecutor is my colleague David Chin. He says evidence is overwhelming. You did good, Tasha. Really good. Over the next few hours, my phone exploded with calls and texts. Colleagues expressing shock. Clients asking if this would affect current projects. Even a few reporters somehow already sniffing out the story, requesting comment. I ignored them all except for a text from Thomas, my oldest friend from college who'd moved to Bayshore City 5 years ago. Just saw the news about Cameron. Holy shit, Natasha. Are you okay? Call me when you can. The story had gone public. I pulled up the Silver Lake City Tribune website and there it was, breaking news banner across the top, local pharmaceutical rep detained in federal fraud investigation. The article was brief, they didn't have many details yet, but it mentioned that Cameron Frost had been detained for questioning regarding an alleged conspiracy to commit property fraud. My name wasn't mentioned specifically, only referenced as his spouse, a prominent local businesswoman. By afternoon, the story had spread to regional news outlets. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. At 4:30, Patricia called. The district attorney just briefed me on the interrogation, she said. Cameron initially denied everything, claimed it was all a misunderstanding. Then they showed him the photographs of documents from his office, the email chains with Whitaker, the unauthorized email forwarding from your account. He stopped talking and requested an attorney. What happens now? He'll be formally arrested this evening and arraigned tomorrow morning. The charges will likely include conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted identity theft, wire fraud for using electronic communications to facilitate the scheme, and computer fraud for the unauthorized email access. Jonathan Whitaker is being arrested simultaneously on conspiracy charges. Will I need to be there? At the arraignment? Not required, but I'd recommend attending. Sit in the gallery. Let him see you there. It sends a message. That evening, alone in the house that suddenly felt enormous and empty, I did something I'd been avoiding. I called Cameron's mother. Natasha, Ruth answered, her voice thick with tears. What's happening? The news is saying Cameron was arrested for fraud. This has to be wrong. Tell me this is wrong. I closed my eyes, hating what I was about to do but knowing it was necessary. Ruth, I can't discuss the details. I'm sorry. Everything needs to go through attorneys now. Through attorneys? But you're his wife. Surely you know this is some terrible mistake. I'm sorry, I repeated. I truly am. But I can't talk about this. She started crying, and I ended the call feeling like the worst person alive, even though I knew intellectually that Cameron had brought this on himself. I poured a glass of wine and walked through our house, my house, really, since I'd purchased it years before meeting Cameron. Every room held memories that now felt poisoned. The kitchen where we'd cooked together on Sunday mornings. The living room where we'd hosted friends. The bedroom where we'd shared what I'd believed was intimacy but now understood was just another part of his performance. My phone rang again. Lydia. Get out of that house, she said without preamble. Pack a bag and come stay with me for a few days. You shouldn't be there alone right now. I'm fine. Natasha, you're not fine. You're in shock. You've been holding everything together for days, being strategic and controlled. But at some point, you need to actually process what's happened. Come here. Let me be the friend you need right now, not just your business partner. She was right. I packed a small overnight bag and drove to Lydia's penthouse, grateful beyond words to have someone who understood both the business implications and the emotional devastation. That night, we ordered Thai food and sat on her balcony overlooking the city lights. For the first time since hiding behind that filing cabinet 5 days ago, I let myself feel the full weight of everything. I keep wondering what was real, I admitted. Was any of it genuine? Did he ever actually love me, or was I just a target from the very beginning? Lydia was quiet for a moment. Does it matter? Of course it matters. Why? Either way, he betrayed you. Either way, he planned to rob you. Whether he loved you once and changed, or never loved you at all, the outcome is the same. What matters is what you do now. Survive. Protect what's mine. Make sure he faces consequences. Exactly. Lydia raised her wine glass. To surviving. And to making sure bastards like Cameron Frost learn that underestimating women is the most expensive mistake they can make. I clinked my glass against hers, feeling something shift inside me. The devastation was real. The betrayal cut deep. But underneath the pain, something harder was forming. Not bitterness exactly, but clarity. Determination. An absolute refusal to let Cameron's actions define my future. My phone buzzed with an email from Patricia. The subject line read, "Arraignment scheduled, Tuesday 10 a.m. Tomorrow, I'd watch my husband stand before a federal judge and hear the charges against him. Tomorrow, the legal machinery I'd set in motion would grind forward another step. And tomorrow, Cameron Frost would begin to understand exactly how catastrophically he'd miscalculated." I set down my wine glass and looked out over Silver Lake City, the lights twinkling like stars spread across the valley. Somewhere out there, Cameron was probably sitting in a holding cell, finally comprehending that his perfect scheme had collapsed. I wondered if he'd figured out yet that I'd known all along. That every moment since I'd overheard that conversation in his office, I'd been 10 moves ahead. "What are you thinking?" Lydia asked. That I built an 8-figure business by being smarter and more strategic than my competition. Cameron forgot that when he married me. He saw a successful woman and thought, easy target. What he didn't see was someone who spent a decade outmaneuvering people who underestimated her. Lydia smiled. "There's the Natasha I know. For a minute there, I was worried the heartbreak might break you." "Oh, my heart is definitely broken," I said honestly. "I'm going to need therapy, probably lots of it. But broken hearts can heal." What Cameron tried to do, steal everything I built, destroy my financial security, leave me with nothing, that would have been permanent devastation. Instead, he's the one facing permanent consequences. Poetic justice. Something like that. We stayed up late talking, not just about Cameron and the legal proceedings, but about what came next. What I wanted my business to look like going forward. What changes I might make to the house. What life could be once I was legally free and emotionally healed. By the time I finally went to bed in Lydia's guest room, I felt something I hadn't felt in days: hope. Not happiness exactly, but possibility. The sense that maybe, eventually, I'd be okay. My phone lit up with one final message before I fell asleep. From Dylan, "Tomorrow starts Cameron's reckoning. But remember, it also starts your liberation. Sleep well, little sister. Justice is coming." I set the phone aside and closed my eyes, knowing that tomorrow would bring its own challenges. But for tonight, I was safe, supported, and stronger than Cameron had ever imagined I could be. And that would have to be enough. Tuesday morning arrived with gray skies and drizzle, weather that matched the weight in my chest. I dressed carefully for the arraignment, a navy blue suit that projected professionalism and strength. Patricia had advised me to look composed, successful, untouchable. "You're not the victim in that courtroom," she'd said. "You're the woman who outsmarted him." Lydia drove me to the federal courthouse, an imposing granite structure in downtown Silver Lake City. Media vans lined the street outside, reporters with cameras positioned near the entrance. "They're going to want statements," Lydia warned as we parked. "Say nothing. Don't even make eye contact." We walked through the gauntlet of journalists calling questions. "Ms. Brennan, how do you feel about your husband's arrest? Did you know about the fraud? Will you be filing for divorce?" I kept my eyes forward, my expression neutral, and pushed through the courthouse doors without acknowledging a single question. Patricia met us inside, looking sharp in a charcoal gray suit. "Good, you're early. The arraignment is in courtroom 6. Cameron's attorney will probably try to approach you. Don't engage. Don't speak to him. Don't even acknowledge his existence." We took seats in the gallery, 3 rows from the front. The courtroom gradually filled with other observers, journalists, a few attorneys watching out of professional curiosity, and surprisingly, Cameron's father Donald, sitting alone on the opposite side. At exactly 10 o'clock, a bailiff brought Cameron in. He wore an orange jumpsuit, his hands cuffed in front of him. He looked diminished somehow, smaller than the confident man who'd kissed me goodbye just yesterday morning. His eyes scanned the courtroom and landed on me. For a moment, our gazes locked. I saw shock flicker across his face, then something darker, anger, realization, the dawning comprehension that I'd been behind his arrest. I held his stare steadily, letting him see absolutely no regret, no sympathy, no weakness in my expression. He knew. Somehow, he'd figured out that I'd discovered his scheme and systematically destroyed it. Good. I wanted him to know. The judge, a stern-looking woman in her 60s named Judge Hartwell, entered and everyone rose. The proceedings began with clinical efficiency. The United States versus Cameron Michael Frost, the prosecutor announced. Your Honor, the defendant is charged with conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted identity theft, wire fraud, and unauthorized computer access. The government requests that bail be set at $500,000 given the defendant's demonstrated intent to commit significant financial crimes and evidence suggesting flight risk. Cameron's attorney, a nervous-looking man named Gerald Simmons who seemed distinctly uncomfortable, argued for lower bail. Your Honor, my client has no prior criminal record. He has strong ties to the community. There's no evidence of flight risk. The prosecutor stood immediately. Your Honor, the defendant maintained an offshore account in the Cayman Islands containing $87,000. Financial records indicate this account was opened 8 months ago and funded through systematic withdrawals from joint marital accounts. This clearly demonstrates preparation for potential flight. I hadn't known about that specific account. Patricia had mentioned offshore holdings, but hearing the exact amount and timeline made my stomach turn. $87,000 stolen from our joint household funds while he smiled and kissed me and planned my destruction. Judge Hartwell barely hesitated. Bail is set at $500,000. The defendant is remanded to custody until bail is posted. Preliminary hearing is scheduled for December 3rd. Next case. Just like that, it was over. Cameron was led away, glancing back one more time with an expression I couldn't quite read. Rage mixed with something that might have been betrayal, as though I'd somehow wronged him by discovering and stopping his crime. Outside the courtroom, Cameron's father approached me, his face etched with confusion and pain. Natasha, please. Just tell me what's happening. Cameron says this is all a misunderstanding, that someone has framed him. I felt genuine sympathy for Donald. He was a good man who'd raised what turned out to be a con artist. Mr. Frost, I can't discuss the case. I'm sorry. Everything has to go through attorneys now. But your family. Surely. We're not family anymore, I said quietly but firmly. I filed for divorce this morning. The papers will be served to Cameron today. Donald's face crumpled. You're divorcing him? While he's in jail? When he needs you most? The question was so absurd I almost laughed. He needs me most? Mr. Frost, your son spent 7 months plotting to steal $12 million of my assets. He hired a lawyer to help him commit fraud. He hacked into my email account to spy on my business. He opened secret offshore accounts with money stolen from our joint funds. And he planned to divorce me the moment he'd successfully transferred everything into his name. So no, I don't think this is when he needs me most. I think this is when he needs a very good criminal defense attorney. I walked away, leaving Donald standing in the courthouse hallway looking like I'd physically struck him. I felt terrible, but the truth needed to be said. Patricia caught up with me outside. The divorce papers are being served to Cameron within the hour. His attorney will probably reach out about settlement, but we're not negotiating until after the criminal case resolves. How long will that take? Depends on whether he fights or takes a plea deal. Given the evidence, I'd estimate his attorney will push for a plea agreement. Maybe 6 to 8 weeks before criminal resolution, then we can finalize the divorce quickly. The media swarmed as we exited the courthouse. This time, Patricia made a brief statement. Ms. Brennan is the victim of an elaborate fraud conspiracy perpetrated by her estranged husband. She's cooperating fully with federal investigators and asks for privacy during this difficult time. She will not be taking questions. We pushed through to Lydia's car and drove away, leaving the circus behind. Back at Lydia's penthouse, I finally allowed myself to break down. The adrenaline that had carried me through the arraignment evaporated, leaving exhaustion and overwhelming sadness in its wake. I keep thinking about our wedding, I admitted to Lydia. He stood there and promised to love and protect me. His vows talked about partnership and trust. And the entire time, was he already planning this? Or did something change later? Does knowing change anything? Maybe not. But I can't stop wondering. My phone rang. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me accept the call. Ms. Brennan? This is Rachel Kimmons. I'm calling from Colorado. I saw the news about Cameron Frost's arrest, and I needed to reach out. The name meant nothing to me. I'm sorry, do we know each other? No, but we have something in common. I dated Cameron 9 years ago, before you met him. He did something very similar to me, tried to steal from my business, opened accounts in my name, forged documents. I filed a civil lawsuit, but his family paid me to settle and sign a non-disclosure agreement. My blood ran cold. He did this before? To you? Yes. And probably to others. When I saw what he tried to do to you, I realized my silence helped enable him to keep targeting women. That NDA was meant to protect Cameron, and I've decided I'm done protecting him. If it helps your case or the criminal prosecution, I'm willing to testify about what he did to me. I sat down heavily, processing this revelation. Cameron wasn't just a husband who'd betrayed me. He was a serial predator with a pattern of targeting successful women. Ms. Kimmons, Rachel, yes. I think the prosecutors would definitely want to hear from you. Can I have my attorney contact you? Absolutely. I've carried guilt about staying silent for 9 years. If speaking up now prevents him from doing this to someone else, then it's worth breaking that NDA. After we exchanged information and ended the call, I immediately forwarded Rachel's contact details to Patricia and the federal prosecutor. Patricia called back within minutes. This is huge, Natasha. Pattern evidence. It means Cameron's defense can't claim this was a one-time mistake or that he got bad advice. This establishes him as a habitual predator. How many others are there, do you think? No way to know. But I'd bet money that once this becomes more public, other women will come forward. She was right. Over the next 3 days, 2 more women contacted either my attorney or the prosecutor's office. Each told similar stories: successful woman meets charming Cameron Frost, whirlwind romance, discovery of financial manipulation, pressure to stay quiet. One woman, Jennifer Torres, had owned a successful catering company in Riverside Falls, 2 hours north of Silver Lake City. Cameron had convinced her to make him a business partner, then within 6 months had embezzled over $200,000 and attempted to sell the company. Another woman, Amanda Chen, had been a dentist with 3 practices. Cameron had forged her signature on loan documents, creating massive debts in her name while funneling the money to accounts she didn't know existed. Both women had been pressured by Cameron's family to accept settlements and sign NDAs rather than pursue criminal charges. The pattern was identical: Cameron targets successful professional women, gains their trust through romance, exploits access to their businesses and finances, and escapes accountability through his family's money and legal pressure. How did I not see this? I asked Dylan during a phone call. How did I miss that I was dating a con artist? Because con artists are good at their job, Tasha. Their entire skill set is built around appearing trustworthy. You didn't fail to see warning signs. He was exceptionally skilled at hiding his true nature. 3 other women, Dylan. At least 3 that we know about. How many more are out there who never came forward? Probably more than we'll ever know. But here's what matters: you stopped him. You didn't just protect yourself, you've exposed a pattern that will put him away for years and prevent him from doing this to anyone else. That's not nothing. On Friday afternoon, Patricia called with an update. Cameron's attorney reached out about a plea deal for the criminal charges. They want to negotiate. What are they offering? They're proposing Cameron pleads guilty to conspiracy to commit fraud and wire fraud in exchange for dropping the identity theft and computer fraud charges. They're suggesting 3 to 4 years in federal prison. And what do you think? I think the federal prosecutor will counteroffer. With the pattern evidence from Rachel, Jennifer, and Amanda, the prosecution has an incredibly strong case. They'll probably push for 5 to 6 years minimum, possibly more depending on how the judge views the pattern behavior. I want him to serve significant time, I said. Not out of vengeance, but because he'll do this again if he gets out too quickly. Agreed. I've already communicated that to the prosecutor. They're not accepting any deal that doesn't include substantial prison time and permanent monitoring after release. That weekend, I did something I'd been putting off. I hired a trauma therapist named Dr. Sarah Whitmore, no relation to Cameron's criminal lawyer, thankfully. My first session was scheduled for Monday afternoon. "You've been functioning in crisis mode for almost 2 weeks, Lydia observed when I told her about the therapy appointment. At some point, you need to actually process the emotional impact of all this. I know. I just keep thinking if I stay busy enough, if I focus on the legal strategy and protecting my business, I won't have to feel how much this hurts. That's not how feelings work, unfortunately." She was right, as usual. Sunday evening, alone in Lydia's guest room, I finally let myself fully acknowledge the grief. Not just grief for my marriage, but grief for the person I'd believed Cameron to be. That person had never existed. I'd fallen in love with a performance, a carefully constructed facade designed to exploit me. The man I'd married didn't exist. He never had. Monday's therapy session was harder than I'd anticipated. Dr. Whitmore asked me to walk through the timeline from the beginning, meeting Cameron, our courtship, the marriage, building what I'd thought was our shared life. "When did you first feel uneasy?" she asked. I thought back carefully. There were small moments. Times when his stories about his past didn't quite line up. Once, he told me he'd never been to Denver, then months later mentioned visiting a college friend there. Little inconsistencies I dismissed as memory lapses. Why did you dismiss them? Because I trusted him. Because I loved him. Because I couldn't imagine someone would be that calculating and deceptive. And now? Now I don't trust my own judgment. If I could miss this, someone planning for 7 months to rob me blind, what else might I miss in the future? Dr. Whitmore leaned forward slightly. "Natasha, here's what I want you to understand. Cameron's ability to deceive you doesn't reflect a failure in your judgment. It reflects his skill as a manipulator. He'd done this before, multiple times, perfecting his technique with each victim. You were targeted by someone with years of practice in exactly this kind of deception. So I was just unlucky? You were targeted. There's a difference. And when you discovered what he was doing, you didn't fall apart. You protected yourself brilliantly. That's not the response of someone with poor judgment. That's the response of someone who, when faced with truth, acted decisively and intelligently." Her words helped, though the underlying pain remained. Healing, I was learning, wasn't linear or quick. Wednesday brought more news. Cameron's attorney had formally proposed a plea deal: guilty pleas to conspiracy and wire fraud, 5 years in federal prison, full restitution of all documented costs I'd incurred, and 5 years of supervised release with financial monitoring. The prosecutor wants to accept, Patricia told me. 5 years is significant time, and it guarantees conviction without the risk of trial. What about the divorce? We'll file simultaneously. Once he pleads guilty to the criminal charges, he'll have no leverage in divorce proceedings. We'll get everything you want: full asset protection, no spousal support for him, and a clause preventing him from ever profiting from discussing your relationship publicly. When? Criminal plea hearing is scheduled for next Wednesday. We'll file divorce papers immediately after. If everything proceeds smoothly, you could be legally divorced by Christmas. 5 years of my life with Cameron, dissolved in less than 6 weeks. The speed felt surreal but also necessary. Every day this dragged on was another day I remained legally tied to someone who tried to destroy me. That evening, I returned to my house for the first time since Cameron's arrest. Walking through the front door felt strange, like visiting a place I'd once lived but no longer recognized. I went directly to Cameron's office, the room where this nightmare had begun. Standing in the doorway, I remembered crouching behind that filing cabinet, my heart pounding, listening to him plot my destruction. But I also remembered the clarity that had emerged from that moment. The cold, strategic determination that had enabled me to outmaneuver him completely. That room, that moment, had revealed something crucial about myself. I was stronger and more capable than I'd ever realized. When faced with betrayal, I hadn't crumbled. I'd fought back with intelligence and precision. I pulled out my phone and called a contractor I'd worked with on previous renovation projects. "Marcus, it's Natasha Brennan. I have a project for you. I want to completely gut and renovate my home office space. Can you come by this week to discuss?" If I was going to continue living in this house, and I'd decided I would, because I'd loved it long before Cameron ever entered the picture, then I needed to reclaim it completely. Starting with transforming his office into something entirely mine. By the time I left that evening, I'd made a list of changes. New paint throughout. Different furniture. Removing every trace of Cameron's presence and replacing it with spaces that reflected only me. The house would be mine again. The business was already protected. And in less than 2 weeks, I'd be legally free. Cameron Frost had tried to steal my empire. Instead, he'd accidentally given me something unexpected, absolute clarity about my own strength, and the knowledge that I could survive anything. The following Wednesday, I sat in the same federal courtroom where Cameron had been arraigned 2 weeks earlier. This time, he wore a suit. His attorney had arranged for proper clothing for the plea hearing, but he looked hollow, diminished in ways that went beyond physical appearance. Judge Hartwell reviewed the plea agreement with methodical precision. "Mr. Frost, do you understand that by pleading guilty to conspiracy to commit fraud and wire fraud, you are waiving your right to trial?" "Yes, Your Honor," Cameron said quietly. "And do you understand that the court is not bound by the sentencing recommendations in this agreement?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Do you wish to make any statement before I accept this plea?" Cameron's attorney whispered something to him. Cameron shook his head slightly, then spoke. "I take full responsibility for my actions. I betrayed someone who trusted me, and I understand that I deserve the consequences." The words were perfect, exactly what his attorney had coached him to say to appear remorseful. But I noticed he never said my name. Never looked at me. Never offered anything resembling genuine apology. Judge Hartwell accepted the plea and scheduled sentencing for January 15th. Cameron was remanded back to custody until his family could post bail under the new conditions, which included electronic monitoring and strict financial oversight. As Cameron was led away, he finally glanced back at me. Our eyes met for perhaps the last time. I saw no remorse there, just cold acceptance. He'd gambled and lost, and now he'd serve his time. But I doubted he'd actually changed or learned anything beyond, "Don't get caught." Outside the courthouse, Patricia handed me a folder. "Divorce papers. We file these this afternoon. Given that he just pleaded guilty to defrauding you, I expect zero resistance. We should have a hearing within 2 weeks, dissolution finalized before year's end." That fast? When one party pleads guilty to attempting to steal millions from the other party, judges tend to move quickly. You'll get everything: the house, all your businesses, full asset protection. Cameron gets nothing except a prison sentence and a criminal record. 2 weeks later, I stood in family court for what would be the final legal proceeding of this nightmare. The divorce hearing was perfunctory, almost anticlimactic after everything that had preceded it. Cameron appeared via video conference from the detention facility where he was being held pending sentencing. His attorney confirmed that Cameron contested nothing in the settlement agreement. The judge, a different one this time, Judge Morrison, reviewed the documents quickly. "Ms. Brennan retains all properties, businesses, and assets in her name. Mr. Frost relinquishes any claim to spousal support. Mr. Frost is prohibited from profiting in any way from discussion of this relationship or divorce. Does either party wish to contest any provision?" "No, Your Honor, both attorneys said simultaneously. The marriage between Natasha Brennan and Cameron Frost is hereby dissolved. You are both free to remarry should you choose. Court is adjourned. 5 years of marriage ended in less than 8 minutes of legal procedure. Patricia and I walked out of the courthouse into cold December sunshine. How does it feel? She asked. Strange, I admitted. I thought I'd feel triumphant or vindicated. Instead, I just feel tired. That's normal. You've been running on adrenaline and determination for weeks. Now that the immediate crisis is resolved, your body and mind are catching up with the trauma. She was right. That evening, alone in my house, truly alone for the first time, with Cameron legally and permanently removed from my life, I felt the full weight of exhaustion settle over me. But underneath the tiredness, something else was emerging. Not happiness exactly, but possibility. Space. The sense that maybe, eventually, I could build something new from the rubble of what I'd lost. The holidays approached with strange duality. My business was thriving, clients had rallied around me once the full story became public, respecting how I'd handled the situation. Several new partnership opportunities had emerged from business owners who admired my strategic response to crisis. But personally, I felt adrift. My first Christmas as a divorced woman. My first New Year's Eve without plans made months in advance. My first birthday, coming up in early January, that would be celebrated without a spouse. Lydia organized a small New Year's Eve gathering at her penthouse. Just close friends, good food, and no pressure to pretend I was fine when I wasn't. To new beginnings, Lydia toasted at midnight. And to the strength to survive endings. We clinked glasses as fireworks exploded over Silver Lake City, marking the transition to a new year that held no guarantees but infinite possibilities. January 15th arrived, Cameron's sentencing hearing. I debated whether to attend, ultimately deciding I needed to see this through to the end. The courtroom was more crowded this time. Rachel Kimmons had flown in from Colorado. Jennifer Torres drove down from Riverside Falls. Amanda Chin took a day off from her dental practice. All 3 women who'd been victimized by Cameron before me, all prepared to give victim impact statements. I watched as each woman stood and spoke about how Cameron's actions had affected their lives. Rachel described losing her business and spending 3 years rebuilding her credit. Jennifer talked about the shame and self-blame she'd carried for years, wondering if she'd somehow invited the exploitation. Amanda spoke about the therapy she'd needed to trust anyone again after Cameron's betrayal. Then it was my turn. I stood, my prepared statement in hand, and looked directly at Cameron for the first time that day. Your Honor, Cameron Frost spent 7 months planning to steal $12 million of assets I'd built over a decade. He hired a lawyer to help him commit fraud. He hacked my email to spy on my business communications. He opened secret offshore accounts with money stolen from our joint funds. And he planned to divorce me the moment he'd successfully transferred everything into his name. But this statement isn't really about what he tried to do to me. It's about the pattern. Rachel, Jennifer, Amanda, and I represent only the women brave enough to come forward. How many others are there? How many women did Cameron target and successfully rob? How many more stayed silent out of shame or fear? Cameron didn't make a mistake. He developed a methodology. He's a predator who specializes in targeting successful women, exploiting their trust, and systematically looting their assets. This isn't about one bad decision, it's about who he fundamentally is. I don't say this out of vengeance. I say it because I believe rehabilitation requires acknowledging the full scope of one's actions. And Cameron has shown no indication that he understands the depth of harm he's caused, not just financially but emotionally and psychologically. My recommendation to this court is that Cameron serve the maximum sentence allowed, with strict financial monitoring after release. Not to punish him, but to protect the next woman he might target if given the opportunity. I sat down, my hands shaking slightly. Cameron's expression remained neutral, unreadable. Judge Hartwell reviewed the pre-sentencing report, then delivered her judgment. Mr. Frost, this court has reviewed extensive evidence of your criminal conduct. What distinguishes your case is not merely the attempted theft from your wife, but the clear pattern of predatory behavior targeting multiple women over nearly a decade. You have demonstrated sophisticated planning, exploitation of intimate relationships, and a complete disregard for the harm caused to your victims. The pre-sentencing report indicates you possess significant intelligence and capability, which makes your choice to use those abilities for predation rather than legitimate success particularly troubling. While the plea agreement recommends 5 years, this court has discretion to exceed that recommendation when circumstances warrant. Given the pattern evidence and the number of victims, I am sentencing you to 7 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised release with strict financial monitoring. You will also pay full restitution to all documented victims totaling $437,000. 7 years. More than the plea deal had promised. Cameron's face finally showed emotion, shock, then resignation. As he was led away, I felt something release in my chest. Not satisfaction exactly, but closure. This chapter was finally, definitively finished. Outside the courthouse, the 4 of us, Rachel, Jennifer, Amanda, and I, stood together in an impromptu circle. "Thank you for coming forward," I said to each of them. "Your courage made the difference." "No," Rachel said firmly. "Your courage made the difference. You didn't accept a settlement. You didn't sign an NDA. You fought back publicly and made it safe for the rest of us to speak up. You broke the pattern. We exchanged contact information, promising to stay in touch." These women understood something about my experience that no one else could. They'd lived through their own versions of the same nightmare. As they dispersed to their cars, Lydia appeared at my side. "How are you feeling?" "Lighter," I said, surprised to realize it was true. "Like I can finally breathe fully for the first time in months." "Good. Because I have a proposition for you." "What kind of proposition?" "Remember how you mentioned wanting to do something meaningful with your success? Something beyond just accumulating more properties?" "Vaguely. That conversation feels like it happened in another lifetime." "Well, I've been thinking about it. What if we started a foundation? Something specifically designed to help women who've been victims of financial abuse in relationships. Legal support, financial counseling, therapy resources. Everything we wished had existed when we needed it." The idea resonated immediately. "Like turning what happened to us into something that helps others?" "Exactly. The Brennan Foundation for Economic Justice. Or whatever name you want. But the mission would be clear: supporting women who've been exploited financially by partners or family members." "I love it," I said, the first genuine enthusiasm I'd felt in months bubbling up. "Yes. Absolutely yes." Over the next several months, Lydia and I threw ourselves into building the foundation. We consulted with legal experts, financial counselors, and trauma therapists. We created a hotline, established partnerships with legal aid organizations, and developed an emergency grant program for women fleeing financially abusive situations. The foundation launched in April with a press conference that attracted significant media attention. The story of how I discovered and stopped Cameron's plot had become somewhat famous in business circles, an example of strategic thinking under pressure. But now I was reframing that narrative. This wasn't just about outsmarting one predator. It was about recognizing a widespread problem and creating systemic solutions. "Financial abuse is one of the least discussed forms of domestic violence," I said during the press conference. "It leaves no visible bruises, but it can be just as devastating as physical violence. It traps people in relationships through economic control. And it's far more common than most people realize." The foundation's first month exceeded all expectations. We received over 400 calls from women across the state describing situations eerily similar to mine: partners controlling finances, stealing from joint accounts, sabotaging careers, using economic pressure to maintain power. "We're not just helping individuals," our program director observed during a staff meeting. "We're documenting a pattern of abuse that the legal system hasn't adequately recognized." By summer, I'd sold 2 of my wellness centers, not because I needed the money, but because I wanted to focus my energy on projects that felt meaningful rather than just profitable. I kept the fitness studios and the spa resort, but shifted my business model towards sustainability rather than constant expansion. I also finally completed the renovation of my house. Cameron's old office had been transformed into a meditation room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the garden I'd expanded. The space felt peaceful, contemplative, entirely mine. One evening in late July, nearly 9 months after that terrible Tuesday when I'd hidden behind the filing cabinet, I sat in that meditation room watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of amber and rose. My phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Whitmore, my therapist. Proud of the progress you've made. Remember, healing isn't linear, but you're moving forward beautifully. Another text came through, this one from Marcus, the contractor who'd renovated my house, who'd somehow become a friend during the process. Coffee tomorrow? Want to hear about your foundation work? And finally, one from Lydia, Foundation just received a major grant. We can expand to 3 new states. You're changing lives, Tasha. I looked around the room I'd created, peaceful, beautiful, entirely reflective of who I was rather than who someone else wanted me to be. The house felt like mine again. The business was thriving on my terms. The foundation was helping women who desperately needed support. Cameron had tried to steal my properties, my wealth, my life's work. Instead, he'd accidentally given me something far more valuable, absolute clarity about my own strength, and the knowledge that I could survive anything. More than survive. I could transform pain into purpose. I could use my worst experience to help others avoid or recover from similar trauma. I could build something meaningful from the rubble of what I'd lost. My phone buzzed one more time. An email from the prison system. Cameron had sent a message through the official channels requesting contact. I deleted it without reading beyond the subject line. Some doors, once closed, should stay closed. Cameron was my past, a painful chapter that had taught me crucial lessons about trust, strength, and resilience. But he wasn't my future. My future was the foundation helping hundreds of women reclaim their financial independence. It was the meditation room where I processed trauma and found peace. It was the friendships I'd deepened through crisis. It was the business I'd rebuilt according to my authentic values rather than ego or competition. It was the woman I'd become, harder in some ways, yes, but also more genuine, more compassionate, more aligned with what actually mattered. As the sun set over Silver Lake City, painting everything in gold and crimson, I raised a silent toast to myself. To survival. To transformation. To the strength I'd discovered when everything else was stripped away. Cameron Frost had tried to destroy me. Instead, he'd accidentally revealed exactly how indestructible I actually was. And that, I finally understood, was the greatest victory of all. Coming up next, you'll see 2 more stories we handpicked just for you. If this one struck a chord, you're going to love what's next. Tap to keep the journey going.